guess, I don't know, the whole idea of being, a forensic scientist, all that stuff, it comes with that morbid territory. And I wasn't faced by anything that was morbid that they could show me.
On October the 5th, 2012, Jessica Ridgeway vanished while on the way to school from her family home. Her disappearance would spark statewide investigations, but with her abductor so forensically meticulous and smart, he would pass under all radars. Following one slip-up, his identity would be revealed, and as the details of her disappearance emerged, the United States of America would be left in disgust and despair. Sometimes, a sudden change in status or appearance can shock those around you. I'm not talking about something small like a new job or a change in shirt, but when friends of Austin Sigg learned that he'd murdered Jessica Ridgeway, they were genuinely shocked by the news. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Adrian, and welcome back to another video by Coffeehouse Crime. Today we're looking at the case of Jessica Ridgeway. And just to let you know, I post solved, unsolved, and strange cases here on a weekly basis. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing to Coffeehouse Crime. So with that said, let's begin today's video. Grab a coffee, pull up a seat, and sit back. This is the case of Jessica Ridgeway. It has been a while since we've been here. Welcome back to Colorado. Found in the heart of North America, the rather rectangular centennial state is famous for its landscapes, wildlife, and wide range in outdoor activities. The Rocky Mountains, which rips through Colorado's western flank, offers incredible views and hiking trails. And if you prefer the city, there's plenty to do here too. Its capital, Denver, is one of the fastest growing cities in modern-day America. And there's plenty of reason why. With a rapidly growing economy and down-to-earth lifestyle, many Americans are looking to call this place home. And at one point, it was even on my own list of places to consider moving to. Found to the north of Denver's central business district lies the small city of Westminster. Technically a municipality, Westminster is the 8th most populous city in Colorado. National attention was brought to the area in 1858, when miners found gold in the South Platte River Valley nearby. Since then, Westminster has transformed several times, and today it mostly serves the high-tech, medical and energy sectors. Found within the snowy suburbs of Westminster, we find the Ridgeway residence. Jessica Ridgeway was a 10-year-old American girl who, at the time, was living with her mother Sarah and grandmother Christine. Unfortunately, Jessica's mother had separated from her father Jeremiah, in which he himself had now moved to Missouri. At least for now, Jessica was living in Westminster, and along with her mother and grandmother, the three of them lived comfortably in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on Moore Street. Jessica's school, Whit Elementary, wasn't too far either, only 1 mile down the road. Jessica was loved by her family, friends, and teachers. She was described as a caring and happy child. She was empathic and full of laughter. She was also quite mature for her age. Her mother, Sarah, recalls Jessica often acting like a teenager without being one yet. Jessica was an easy child to look after. Despite Sarah being a single mother and also working long hours at a nearby tech company, she didn't have any issues bringing her daughter up. We're moving forward to October the 5th, 2012. Being Colorado, Westminster was already beginning to freeze over for the winter. And despite it being somewhat early, the city was already covered in a thin blanket of snow. Sarah had just returned home from her night shift, and although her hours were flexible, she was home this morning. On the other end of the circadian rhythm, Jessica's alarm struck at 7:45 AM. It was a school day, so of course she was expected to attend. Her usual morning routine followed. Go downstairs, watch TV, eat a granola bar, and then head back upstairs to get dressed. When she came back downstairs, Jessica and her mother peeled a couple of oranges ready for her school snack, before filling up her water bottle for the day ahead. Sarah ushered Jessica to the front door, reminding her not to be late for the first class of the day. The time was 8:30, but luckily she didn't have far to go. Jessica would usually make the first part of her journey alone, but this wasn't for very long. Her friend Jeremy's house was just a block down the road, and from there they would walk the remaining half-mile together to Whit Elementary. With Sarah working the night before, her main priority was to get into bed as soon as her daughter had left the house. She was tired from the long hours of work, and needed some well-deserved rest. And with that said, getting into bed shortly before 9 AM, she peacefully fell asleep. Waking up shortly after 4 p.m, Sarah awoke to some very concerning news. For one, the house was still empty with no sign of Jessica anywhere. But the worry didn't stop there. Looking down at her phone, she noticed multiple missed calls and a voice message. Jessica's school had tried to contact her in the morning while she was still asleep, and the message was to ask where Jessica was, as she'd never made it to school. Jeremy had no idea where his friend was either. Despite being called by Jessica that morning to confirm her arrival, she never made it to his home. He walked to school alone. There was no sign of Jessica anywhere. As a result, and in a blind panic, Sarah called the police immediately.
Westminster 911, what is the address of your emergency?
It's 10786 Moore Street.
10786 Moore Street?
Yeah.
Okay, what's going on there?
My daughter's missing. I guess she never made it to school this morning.
How old's your daughter?
She's 10.
Okay, what's your daughter's name?
Jessica Ridgeway.
And when did you last see her?
This morning when she left at 8:30.
Did she walk?
Yeah. And I checked her friend's house that she walked and they're not answering the door.
And you said that the school called, so they weren't?
And I work nights, so I slept through the call.
Okay, Sarah, sorry about that. We've got several officers on the way over to help you out, okay?
Police were soon able to get in touch with Jeremy's father, who in return was able to confirm that they never saw Jessica that morning. This means something abnormal had happened between their home and Chelsea Park, which is right next to Jeremy's home. Sarah confirmed that her daughter had left the home wearing a black jacket, black boots, blue jeans, a black and pink backpack, and at the time did not own a mobile phone. It would take 5 long hours before all protocols were met for an Amber Alert, and with this finally being granted at around 9 p.m, the state of Colorado was already in darkness. Both dark and long the fresh night may be, but that didn't stop Jessica's family, friends, and the local community from beginning their investigation. And so, the search for Jessica Ridgeway was on.
We start with breaking news. Take a look. This 10-year-old girl missing now for more than 12 hours. A massive search is underway in Westminster.
Right now, police, along with the CBI, have issued an Amber Alert. And the reason is this. It's because of the amount of time that has passed since she was last seen. At this point, they do not think she was perhaps abducted by an acquaintance or a relative. Even though her father lives out of state, there are no concerns from police, at least at this point. They also do not believe she ran away. They say she is emotionally stable. They say she is a good kid, and that is what's adding to the concern in all of this.
We're using every resource we have. We're trying to use air or helicopters that have equipment that can search in the dark. Unfortunately, the weather has grounded those, so we're not able to use that tool. We've brought our fire department in, who has equipment that sees in the dark, thermal imaging equipment, so they're out searching with that.
Come morning, searches were well underway for the missing girl, using both law enforcement and civilian volunteers. Both the equipment and the methods used were extensive. There were helicopters, thermal imaging cameras, and search dogs. However, despite all of this effort, there was no sign of Jessica. The agony found within their anticipation would not get any better. Come the next day, as her disappearance hit the 48-hour mark, Jessica was still nowhere to be found. There was, however, a small glimmer of hope. About 6.5 miles away from Jessica's home, and in the wrong direction to her school, a local resident had found a backpack. When officers arrived at the scene, they quickly confirmed that it did in fact belong to Jessica Ridgeway, and alongside it they also found her water bottle. Through several interviews with local residents, they were able to narrow down the time frame in which they believed the backpack would have been dumped, indicating a time between 7 and 10 p.m. on October the 6th, which would have been about 34 hours after Jessica disappeared. To add to the already concerning details, Jessica's shoes and prescription glasses were also found inside this bag, meaning she no longer had the shoes to protect her feet or the glasses to properly see the environment around her. Following the discovery of Jessica's backpack, and as the length of her disappearance shifted from hours into days, the assumption that Jessica had been abducted became stronger. Safe to say that almost nobody thought she had left her shoes and run away.
We're also getting a new look at Jessica Ridgeway herself through home video, holding a dog or a puppy. Take another look at her. Police asking you to pay attention to what you see in this video. It's been a full 4 days now since the 5th grader from Westminster disappeared on her way to school Friday morning. Here's another one of the new photos we got, just several of them released this morning. You can see her walking a dog. You can see a gap in her front teeth. Now they're hoping today to finish searching an expansive open space area near the Rock Creek neighborhood in Superior. That's where the backpack was found on Sunday. They also hope to finish near Jessica's own neighborhood, about 6.5 miles south of Rock Creek.
During the disappearance phase of this case, there were several unfortunate side stories. To begin with, Jessica's parents were both initially deemed to be potential suspects. Now, naturally, this has to come into some sort of consideration. But with the parents Jeremiah and Sarah now separated, wild speculation started to circulate. The two were very quickly drawn out of consideration, but this was sure to add to additional stress to an already traumatic situation. As the days moved by, Jessica's family were becoming further distraught, further desperate, and further hopeful for some good news. Statistically speaking, around 80% of missing children are found within the first 24 hours. As time proceeds, it becomes less and less likely that they'll be discovered alive. So we can see why the Ridgeway family were becoming increasingly restless. And on October the 10th, 2012, 5 days since Jessica's disappearance, a harrowing discovery emerged. Found 7 miles west of Jessica's home, and close to an assortment of abandoned mines, lies an open area named Patridge Park. It's here, amongst the tall grass, that a small body had tragically been found. Or at least part of it. The torso of a small female child had been found, but her arms, legs, and head were missing. In fact, as were most of the organs, the torso was now mostly a cavity. It also appeared that the torso had been washed several times. Due to its condition, it would take officers almost 2 days to identify the body through DNA analysis. And after using Jessica's DNA found within her home, they were unfortunately able to confirm it was her. The conclusion to her disappearance was amongst the worst of all possible scenarios. Jessica had not been found safe or alive. And furthermore, this was no accident. The community of Colorado were now looking at an extremely horrific homicide, and even worse, her murderer was unknown. The discovery of Jessica's body really changed local dynamics. Her death became a fresh reminder to children's safety. Parents became more vigilant, and with Jessica's killer still roaming the streets of Colorado, nobody could be sure if he would ever strike again. The hunt for Jessica's abductor was expansive. With more than 500 homes and over 1,000 vehicles searched, the FBI were also investigating over 1,000 leads made through over 2,000 tips. The public were urged to remain vigilant, and to observe those around them by looking for changes in habits, daily patterns, and peculiar absences. If any of these were to ring true, residents were urged to report the name to law enforcement. This wasn't the only thing happening immediately after Jessica's discovery, as in fact, the FBI were very hard at work. It turns out that law enforcement was actually able to discover a second set of DNA from within Jessica's backpack. This DNA was analysed and then submitted into the Combined DNA Index system, also known as CODIS. CODIS is a system used to compare DNA to potential suspects, or to other crime scenes in which a suspect is yet to be identified. And what they found was intriguing. It turns out that the DNA collected from Jessica's backpack also matched the DNA found from another incident only 5 months prior. In the afternoon of May the 28th, 2012, a 22-year-old female jogger had been attacked by an unknown man. She had been grabbed from behind, ragged, and then dragged to an underbrush nearby. Fortunately, she was able to scare this individual off and call the police. However, she was not able to identify him, and unfortunately, no further progress had been made. It appeared that this assailant was very smart. He had managed to evade not one but 2 separate incidents, with the second one being much more brutal than the first. And this was extremely frustrating for law enforcement. They were seriously putting in the hours here. I'm talking about several hundred DNA tests, thousands of man-hours, and several agencies all working under one goal. And despite all of this, they were still none the wiser. From hours, into days, and then into weeks, Colorado was in full anticipation to find Jessica's mysterious killer, and they almost didn't, if it wasn't for one single phone call.
Hi, this is Molly at Westminster Police. Can I help you?
Hi,
I need you to come to my house. My son wants to turn himself in for the Jessica Ridgeway murder.
Okay, what's the address?
10622 West 102nd Avenue.
And what's going on there? Ma'am,
Not hear me? He just confessed to killing her.
I know. I want you to tell me what's going on. Can you tell me exactly what he said?
But he did it, and he gave me details, and her remains are in my house.
Did you see them?
No.
Is he there with you?
Yes.
Is he cooperative?
Yes.
How old is your son?
17.
What is your son's name?
Austin Sigg.
Okay. Do you think that he's going to be cooperative with the officers?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think that Austin would talk to me?
Will you talk to her? Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Hello?
Is this Austin?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on right now, or how you're feeling, or how did this come about?
I don't exactly get why you're asking these questions. I murdered Jessica Ridgeway.
Okay.
I have proof that I did it. There is no other question. You just have to send a squad car, something down here, and I will answer all the questions that you want to ask, or anyone wants to ask of me as soon as you gotta get down here.
Can you tell me what part of the house that her remains are in?
Underneath the house in a crawl space.
Okay, did you know Jessica before this?
No, I did not.
I mean, do you have a criminal history of any sort?
The only other thing that I have done that before this was the Kettner Lake incident where the woman got attacked. That was me as well.
So, who is Austin Sigg? Could he really have killed Jessica? And was he the silent assailant behind these two crimes? Born on January the 17th, 1995, he was only 17 at the time of Jessica's death. And unfortunately, the 17 years before this incident were not happy. Living in Westminster, Colorado, he grew up with his mother, Mindy. His parents were divorced, and we'll get to the reasoning in just a moment. Austin was a very strange child. Quite honestly, there are many disturbing aspects to his demeanour. But to save time, I'm going to highlight a few of them which I think summarised Austin well. At the very young age of 12, Austin was caught by his mother looking at pornography which included minors. He was taken to a Christian therapist, but this interest would silently continue in the background. He was into his music and gaming, often taking the username Dahastvath, Vath meaning monster. He also collected knives and samurai swords. Being a victim to bullying in high school, Austin eventually dropped out, and without a father or mother to properly guide him back into education, he academically slipped. Saying this, he would later go on to earn himself an equivalent diploma. Austin was fascinated with death and mortuary science. This would lead him to attend Arapahoe Community College, where, no surprise, he majored in mortuary science. This fascination led him to do well in his respected field, and shortly after this, he began to win awards in student crime scene investigation competitions. Although Austin was smart at the crime scene, his father Robert seemed to have a bad history of committing them. He had been arrested on multiple occasions, accused of bank fraud, domestic violence, and assault. And although his mother was a supportive figure in Austin's life, she wasn't perfect either. In fact, Mindy was not going to win Mother of the Year anytime soon. She often seemed to laugh off her son's increasingly concerning behaviour. She would joke to friends about his fixation with body decomposition. And to add to this, she even revealed that she and her son would practice zip tying together, which, if you ask me, is just freaking weird. In the morning of October the 26th, and following his phone call, police swarmed the Sigg residence where they then arrested Austin. It turns out that Austin had become extremely nervous in the days leading up to his confession. When local media reported that police had linked the two cases together, he felt extremely ill and wobbly, which, yeah, is called anxiety. That very night, he slept in his mother's bed, which is kind of strange if you ask me, before confessing to her and police in the morning. After his arrest, Austin then led police to a crawl space located in his bedroom. This is where, for the last 3 weeks, he had been keeping some of Jessica's remains. Police would also find multiple broken black zip ties in his Jeep. Bleach and trash bags were also located on his porch, the exact brand and size that Jessica's remains had been found in. The basement in which Austin had spent most of his life in was an absolute mess. Cups, plates, and packaging were all over the place, with clothes and random pieces of furniture found throughout. A pair of samurai swords sat above his bed. The Jeep in which Jessica was kidnapped was then towed away by officers in preparation for thorough analysis. And as for Austin's interrogation, this is how it went.
I used zip ties to zip tie her hands and legs together, and I drove her around for probably a good 10-20 minutes. I asked her if she had a cell phone. I would lie to her. I would tell her that everything was going to be okay, and I sat there and I stared at her, and I just remember absolutely blankness in my head, having no thoughts, nothing. I guess, I don't know, the whole idea of being, a forensic scientist, all that stuff, it comes with that morbid territory. And I wasn't faced by anything that was morbid that they could show me.
What were you planning on doing that day?
I had the intent of picking up any female that came across where I was.
So you were out, for a better word, hunting?
Yeah, that's the only word I can think of.
And did you know Jessica?
No.
Had you ever seen her before?
No, not at all. She was wrong place, wrong time. It was all random.
You didn't stop the neighborhood or go over to that neighborhood and was looking for her?
Anytime that I would even see someone walking while I was out in one of those modes, my heart would just instantly start beating really fast, and I couldn't think straight.
Was there a thrill aspect to it?
I've been trying to figure that out for a while now.
Austin would lay all details on the table. It turns out that Jessica was not specifically targeted. He was merely on the hunt to locate a vulnerable individual, abduct them, and then kill them. He described to officers how he spotted her walking to school, lay low in the backseat of his Jeep, and after walking past his vehicle, he then jumped out and kidnapped her. Much like the practice he had with his mother, he then zip-tied Jessica's arms and legs together before driving her to his home. They then watched TV for a short while. To be honest with you, after reading the public police report, I cannot stomach sharing the fine details. But in the briefest summary possible, Austin then sexually assaulted Jessica, strangled her, resulting in her death, and then cut her limbs apart in the bathtub, all with a Stanley knife. Some of her organs were then kept in labelled jars, where others were flushed down the toilet. He then waited a couple of days before discarding her backpack in an opposite direction to his home, and after hearing that police were using cadaver dogs and thermal imaging, he decided to remove her torso from his property, again throwing police off of his trail. When the friends of Austin Sigg were interviewed, they were very shocked by the news.
Like, I could have seen why Jessica trusted him, like getting in the car with him or whatever when she took. Yeah, because he is a nice guy and she would have trusted him.
What kind of stuff was he interested in?
He loves computers, video games.
Very smart.
He liked spending time with family and his girlfriend and all that.
Is he the kind of guy that could murder a little girl?
He's a smart. We never thought, like, it was shocking.
He was the kid that went around school and, like, the kids who walked down the hall alone, he would walk with you. He was one of those that always talked to everybody, always said hi to everybody, knew everybody. He was so nice.
Most of us grew up with him. We went to WIT together, we went to Win Carl, and now we're here. And then we see this going on, we're like, where did this come from?
Austin confessed that Jessica's murder was all part of a sick fantasy. And not only was the random attack on the female jogger him, but he also planned to do the exact same thing to her. When being interviewed by detectives, he said that he didn't feel the joy from killing Jessica Ridgeway that he thought he would. Due to his age, Austin was not eligible for the death penalty, but prosecutors would of course pursue a life sentence. He admitted to 15 crimes covering his attacks on Jessica Ridgeway and the female jogger. These included first-degree murder, sexual exploitation of a child and robbery of Jessica Ridgeway, and attempted kidnapping of the jogger. To further outrage the nation, Austin initially pleaded not guilty to his crimes, though in 2013 he would change his plea to guilty. During his trial, Austin was considered to be a sadistic necrophiliac with psychopathic traits, but not necessarily psychopathic. As a result of this case, Austin was found guilty and sentenced to 86 years in prison on top of a life sentence, meaning that his life as a free man ended at the age of 17. He will certainly die behind bars. In the year of 2014, he was transferred to a secret location out of state, mostly for protection over the vile crimes that this sack of shit committed. But enough with Austin. With a case so awful, it is sometimes hard to look past the monster and see the victim for what she was, a 10-year-old girl at the very beginning of her life. From the moment Austin set eyes on her, Jessica had no chance to defend herself. She was young, kind, and trusting, walking just 1 block to meet her friend before school. Her mother and father described her as their rock, their foundation, their world. She enjoyed playing on her scooter with her dog and her friends at the local park, a park which has since been transformed in her memory. Just down the road from the house that she used to live in, Jessica Ridgeway Memorial Park now remembers her and her name, decorated in purple as remembrance to her favourite colour. Like many children, Jessica Ridgeway was told to be careful with strangers. She was told to scream if anyone tried to grab her. And in a dark irony, those warnings were actually reflected in her school notebook. Within it, she wrote, "Do not play at the park alone," followed by, "Watch out for strangers." Scream for help she did, but tragically, no one was there to hear her. So, what is the takeaway from all of this? Being honest, it is very difficult to derive one in a way that everyone would find acceptable. Jessica was only walking 1 block from a family house. The chance of being kidnapped here is very small, but the ramifications if this were to happen can quite clearly be catastrophic. This really is a judgment of risk versus probability, and being honest, there is no golden rule. Thank you again for watching another video today by Coffeehouse Crime. If you found this case interesting or learned something new today, then please remember to like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet. What are your thoughts on Jessica's case? Do you think this walk was sensible? Please share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thanks again folks, and I'll be back again real soon for another video. But until that moment arrives, please remember to look after each other. Goodbye.